Okay, so I'm super excited to introduce today Amalia Brightly. I was going to say Hodgkins, but it's not. It's Amalia
Gillott.
Brightly-Gillott. Amalia Brightly-Gillott. Apologies there. Amalia
That's all right.
Brightly-Gillott, CEO, Managing Director of the Family Business Place. How are you today and how are you feeling?
I'm very good, Nicholas. Thank you very much. I'm excited to be interviewed rather than doing the interviewing.
Yeah, I thought I'll reverse the roles today for a change, put you on the spot. So I'm going to get straight into it. Let's discuss first about the Family Business Place. What exactly is it and how do you help family businesses?
Okay, so Family Business Place is really a national membership for the leaders of family-owned businesses and the next generation. So my mum and I set it up almost 15 years ago now. And it was really just to bring together people who were working in their businesses with their families to meet other people who understand what that's like and the complexities and the dynamics that go with that. Because unless you work in a family business, you'll never truly quite understand. A lot of my friends say, how on earth can you work with your family? It's not for everyone. So we just thought, wouldn't it be amazing if there was somewhere you could come, you could belong to a community of other people just like you who totally get it. So we have a national membership, 150 members around the country. We run events, we do all sorts of things to support families in business.
That's fantastic. And as you mentioned, you are yourself a family business.
Absolutely, yeah.
How have you managed working with your mother, taking over the reins of your mother? How did that work?
So we essentially set the business up together almost 15 years ago. So I've been in it from day one, which is the other unusual thing about family business. But she was the driving force for the first sort of 10, 11 years. And I worked alongside her. And I think because we're just very good at communicating as a family anyway, it went quite smoothly. Yeah, it went pretty smoothly. I mean, there were a few ups and downs. And but then when I came back from having my son, I took over as managing director. So we've been through the whole succession process ourselves. And again, that just comes back to very, very clear communication about having a voice and about saying exactly what it is that you want and your own personal aspirations. So we're just very good at talking to each other. And I think that is the hardest thing with family businesses, because you don't want to upset them because they're your loved ones.
No, agreed. I mean, you've touched that hot subject, which is communication for me. I mean, how important is communication? But more importantly, how do you remove the emotions behind communicating with your family members, which tends to be the hardest aspect of having effective communication with your family members?
Yeah, so I think it's a very good case for separation here. So whilst it is very hard to separate business from family in the emotional sense, when you're talking about the success and your business thriving commercially, you have to almost be quite cold about it. You have to say, right, we deal with business stuff over here and we deal with family stuff over here. And I think it's a bit like, you know, when you go into a marriage, no one really thinks, oh, I need a prenup, but it's a really good time to do it when things are going well. Because if you leave it to when things are catastrophic and you've separated and things are just really not very nice, then it gets really, really emotional. And it's the same in a family business, really. If you can set things up, if you can set up vehicles for communication, if you can set up forums for discussion when things are going well, then when things start getting quite tricky, you can just refer back to the structures that you've already put in place. And that's really, really important.
Absolutely crucial. Yeah, 100% agree with that, especially with the family itself, not just for family business. I talk about in my book the business of being a family.
Yeah.
When wealthy families have a lot of money to look after, that in itself is a business. It needs to be structured similar to a business. So things like effective communication, writing things down, having formal meetings with your family members to discuss things and get your points across. And of course, I'm assuming the Family Business Place helps these businesses to create these communication structures.
Well, yeah, but I also think in the first instance, we help people to even realise that, you know, there's help out there, that you don't have to be doing it alone. And the thing about family businesses, they've very often just grown organically. And that's one of the most wonderful things about them, as they are not corporate. But in the same breath, growing organically does mean that you have quite relaxed structures and procedures in place. And I think sometimes it's just good to hear from an outsider or to hear from another family business, which is what we do a lot. We connect them with each other. It's good to hear that actually we put these things in place at the start and it's really saved our bacon.
Superb. And what do you, I mean, I can see you're obviously enthused about your business, but what do you love most about working with the Family Business Place?
I mean, I just think that the people that we meet when when your name is above the door, it just means something, doesn't it? So you're dealing with people whose entire lives have been spent building this empire. No matter how big or small it is, to them, it's their family empire. And, you know, most of us have literally got our names above the door. So the thing I love the most about working with family businesses is that you meet just the most amazing people who care and who want to build something for the future, which is very different to the other side of sort of corporate life, where people have got their own aspirations and their own agenda. Really, in a family business, everyone's going towards the same goal. It's just that some of us might have slightly different ways of getting there, and of course that's where conflict can happen. But I mean, I've met some of the most amazing entrepreneurs that do the most wonderful charity work, that give back to communities, they're just phenomenal people, really. And I think we shouldn't really underestimate the power and the influence and the contribution of family businesses to our little village high street, to the national economy, to our local communities. It's huge.
No, thoroughly agree. And so what are the challenges that you see that these family businesses have as they grow organically, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so it does become quite hard because you reach certain thresholds. So you might start off as a little family business, take on your first member of staff. Before you know it, you've grown to 10 members of staff, which is fantastic. And then before you know it, you're at 50, you're at 100. Yet very often we see that the wife or the sister-in-law is still doing all of the HR. And then that's those sorts of things where you need the structures in your family business need to grow as the business grows. Because what was fit for purpose then perhaps isn't fit for purpose now. And if you want to attract the very best people to come and work in your business, they need to see that things are done properly. And that's something that family businesses really struggle with. There is no textbook to running a family business, but there are some really good structures that you can put in place. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges, that the structure around a family business grows as the business grows. The other thing is what we said earlier, separating the business from the family by using platforms and forums and different vehicles to do that, whether that's having a family assembly over here so that you can have the management team over here, and then you can have the board in the middle that joins the two. So there are very, very simple things you can do. Succession is probably the number one problem, and succession isn't just plain sailing by any means, and people think it just happens by magic, and it doesn't. Some families are very lucky that it just seems to have happened organically. We have a member that's 26 generations, so they've done it 26 times. So they know a thing or two about succession. But actually it's something that needs planning, it needs talking about, it needs preparation. You don't just choose a date in the calendar and hope that it's going to happen okay on that day. So succession is one of those things that can be the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. But actually, if you can prepare and you can plan for it, it can go very, very well. And everyone can come out flourishing and the business can come out thriving. If you don't prepare and plan for it, well, all kind of will hit the fan.
Let's put some timelines in there. How long does it take to prepare for succession?
I mean, how long is a piece of string, really? I've got some families who literally, when their youngsters are growing up, they have a family assembly once a year. All the youngsters come, all the family members come. They talk about the business, they talk about shareholdings, they talk about responsibility of being a shareholder. I mean, they're preparing kids from their sort of like 12, 15, 18 upwards. Other families, you know, it might be something they think about in 5 years' time. Dad, mum wants to retire in 5 years' time. So let's start preparing the next generation. Let's get them some leadership training. Let's start getting them more involved with the management. And I'd say sort of between 5 and 2 years in advance is where you probably need to start really seriously thinking about it.
And how do you deal with, I mean, how do you help entrepreneurs to let go? That is quite emotive in itself.
Yeah, ask my mum.
Yeah, well, now, when is the right time to let go? You know, how do you let go of something that you've been building for 20, 30, 40 years? I mean,
we use this phrase letting go, but I mean, it's your baby, isn't it? I mean, you'll know this from your dads and anyone that runs a family business. I mean, my mum certainly in the early days sacrificed everything. I mean, their house was on the line. I've met families where they started off with 10 credit cards just to get the business going. You've sacrificed everything. You haven't been to family occasions. You haven't been on holiday. You've remortgaged your house in order to get this little baby off the ground. So it's quite hard to then suddenly turn around in 40 years' time and say, right, I don't need you now, Dad. See you later. So there's something, I think, around purpose. I think when you've got a purpose in life and your purpose is to get out of bed in the morning, it's to go into the office, it's to see your team, it's to do the thing, it's to build the widget, it's to deal with the clients. That is your purpose in life. And I think in order to make it easier for the next generation to step back, you need to redefine their purpose. They need to find themselves again. You know, they need to think, what's important to me now in this stage of my life? And it might be, do you know what, I didn't see my kids growing up because I was working 24/7, but now I have a chance with my grandchildren. Now I have a chance to build relationships again. Now I have a chance to reconnect with my old friends or to take up those hobbies that I've always wanted to do. It might be I want to pour all my efforts into setting up a charitable foundation, doing some philanthropy work, doing some community work, doing some volunteering. I think it's about redefining the purpose of the outgoing generation, really, so they don't feel like they're just, you know, tossed up on the waste pile and they'd be done with them. And also, they have so much wisdom and experience in their brain, in their head, you know, so you don't want to just cut that off and let it go. And I remember speaking to James Reed from Reed Recruitment, and he said, you know, what a privilege that I have my dad on tap every single day to say, Dad, how did you do this? I think this is going to be a problem. What would you have done? You know, that is such a privilege, because in corporate life, your predecessor is gone. You have nothing else to do with them. In a family business, you've got them there. So maybe think of a way, a sort of a vehicle to use that maybe once a month they can come in and they can do some brain dumping. Maybe they can write a book of how they got things going, how they overcome problems. Maybe they could tell the story of, you know, from the early days. So there are so many things you can do for that outgoing generation. But I think it's really important to respect where they come from, what they sacrificed, what they've built, how much they know, because they would have seen everything, and then help them to find a new purpose in their life.
No, agreed. I mean, it's about passing the human intellectual capital to the next generation, not just finance. The finance is important, but it's what comes with the finance. And you mentioned it's the stories, it's the experience, it's the knowledge. It's, you know, how they built this child up from absolutely nothing, what they had to go through, the sacrifice they had to make. And that's exceptionally valuable. I mean, let's take your 26th generation business. I'm assuming that's exactly what they did when they passed the business down from generation to generation.
Absolutely. And you know what, when you walk into their butchers in Dorset, and when you walk in, there's old photos everywhere. They've got a book, you know, plastered all over their website. There's a huge respect for what's gone before them, because they appreciate they wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for that.
And how do businesses survive and thrive over multiple generations in terms of adapting, moving with the times, but at the same time sticking to the principles that got them there in the first place? How do you achieve that balance within a business?
Yeah, so I deal with a lot of sort of younger next generation, maybe in their late 20s, 30s, who say to me, you know, it's not necessarily the business I want to run, but I feel like I can't change things because this is how it's been done for the last 3, 4, 5, 26 generations. And actually, I think the point there is your forefathers wouldn't have even survived if they hadn't reinvented things, if they hadn't have gone with the times, if they hadn't reacted to the market at the time. So I don't think you should be scared to make the business how you want it to be, how you think it will be most viable, and to do things differently, because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep that business absolutely flourishing. And I said obviously just now about respecting the past, but also don't be beholden to it, because the business that your great-great-grandfather ran 100 years ago may not be fit for the purpose for the modern world, especially the world we're living in now. Oh my goodness, the last 18 months, business has changed so much. So I don't think the next generation should be scared to reinvent things, do things differently. It's always really hard when you're talking about people, because very often they'll take over the family business. And actually a lot of the staff have been there for 20, 30, 40 years. Their dad's old golfing buddies. That's really hard to actually refresh a workforce as well. But I think, you know, it takes balls to run a family business, and you have to make hard decisions. But I think if you can make those hard decisions whilst being still aligned to your purpose, your values, the whole reason for being a family business, then you'll be okay. Just don't be scared.
Well, that fits quite nicely to my next question. Nepotism or meritocracy, which one is the correct path to follow, or is it just a balance of the two?
I think you're absolutely right. It is a balance of the two. And I think there is, you know, nepotism is said with such negative connotations, but I think there absolutely is room for nepotism in a family business. After all, that's the very reason most people start family businesses, is to provide an income and a livelihood for their families and their loved ones. So I absolutely think there is room there. I think there is something about a family member that a non-family member will never ever quite be. There's an unwritten sort of trust and loyalty and dedication when you belong to the family, and you've all got the same goal and the same purpose. I think, but also obviously you can't just have some half-wit running the family business just because his name is above the door, you know. There was I don't know if you saw it recently, there was a drama on the TV called The Pact, and it was all about a big family business, and the young son came in with his Lamborghini and, you know, his cash, and he wasn't the right person to run the business. And I think it was a brewery. He wasn't the right person. So I think you have to be honest as a parent. Are my children really up to this? You have to be honest as a child. Is this what I really want to do? Am I any good at it? Have I got what it takes? And I think there needs to be a really good balance of whether they're good enough at it, and whether actually they could be good enough at it if they surrounded themselves with a fantastic team as well. You know, so I think there's a fine balance between the two.
Yeah, no, agreed. And it's about whether they love the business as well, rather than forcing the business onto a child. I mean, exit or passing to the next generation is almost a two-way conversation. You've got the parent who has to have that conversation with the child in order to pass the bit, you know, to make the decision whether they pass the business down the next generation or sell the business.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
how, you know, how does a parent make that decision on behalf of their children? I mean, how do you help businesses make, because this is a hard choice to make. Do
Yeah.
you sell, provide it to the child? And as a child looking up to their parent, the question there is, do I want to take over this business? Do I want this responsibility? Or do I want to choose my own path for my own lifetime? How do you make those decisions? How do you bridge the gap between the parent and the child?
So we have seen so many different scenarios, as you can imagine, our 15 years of dealing with thousands of family businesses who all think, by the way, they're completely unique. Every time we meet one, we must be the only family going through this. No, you're not. There have been thousands before you, and there'll be thousands after you. So that's the first thing to say. You are absolutely not alone. You are not unique. People have been there, done that, got the t-shirt. The best thing you can do is learn from that. Go and chat with other family businesses who've been through it and learn from their mistakes. But I would say, I mean, as an example of a couple of scenarios, we've had a manufacturing family business run by three brothers, and they all wanted to go their own separate ways. What do? Do they sell the business because they assume there's no next generation interested? One is a vet, one is a teacher. They don't want anything to do with the business. When we actually spoke to the kids, I say kids, they're like in their 20s and 30s. When we spoke to them, there were quite a few who said, you know what, if there was an opportunity, I would be really interested. Because although I've never worked in the business, it means so much to me. And I've spent 10 years in the city. I've got plenty of management experience and leadership training. I think I could really add something. And it would break my heart to see the family business sold. Well, that is like, they'd never heard that before because they'd never asked. They'd never talked about it as a family. There'd been no family assembly or anything like that. So these brothers were toying with, how do we sell the business? And in fact, they've got, you know, youngsters out there who'd be really, really interested in doing something and would be heartbroken if it's sold. You know, and then we've got other businesses where, you know, it's the age-old thing of the dad just assumed the son wants to take over. And when it came to the crunch, the son said, Dad, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. Well, if they'd had those conversations years and years in advance, it would have saved so much heartache. We've had other businesses, daughter was about to take over, got to that point and said, I just don't think I'm cut out. I might be ready in 5 years, 10 years time, but I don't think I'm ready for it now. They're conversations that need to be had well in advance. So I think, reverting back to the very first thing we said, it's about just talking to each other. Have these conversations, have them with you, your close family, your wider family. You have no idea what people are thinking. And just because someone wasn't interested 10 years ago, doesn't mean they're not interested now. Doesn't mean because they were interested when they were 15 and they were helping out in the warehouse for some pocket money, they loved it, doesn't mean they want to run the business full time when they're in their 30s. So it's about talking, about communicating, being honest without fear of hurting the feelings of the people you loved, very often your mum and your dad.
I think it's that word keeps cropping up time and time again. It's communication, conversation, sit down and speak about what is genuinely going on within the family dynamic and with the family business. It's absolutely crucial. Yet, why do families not do it?
That's a very good question. But I would say if you know as a family you struggle to communicate, just get someone else in to facilitate it. And there is no shame in asking for outside help. You know, the amount of times we get called in by the next generation and it's the parents, so why do we need them? You know, we've always done it this way ourselves. We've always managed to do it between us. There is no shame in saying, look, we just need someone independent, whether it's someone like me, whether it's their accountant, whether it's a non-executive director they've got, just get them to come and run the meetings. Have a talking stick if you need to. You know, if you know you struggle to communicate honestly as a family, ask for outside help, just to enable the conversations, because once they start, you won't be able to stop. And that's a great thing.
And I think, I mean, do families appreciate the importance of effective communication? Because that's another hurdle that needs to be arisen, understanding the problem before finding the solution.
Absolutely. And a lot of families will say, yeah, we're great communicators. They're not, they're terrible. And they think they are. And they think that the distraction of business stuff and finances and strategy really is just putting a bit of a band-aid over all the family stuff that's bubbling away under the surface. So, you know, we actually went to see a family business once, and the reason they didn't want to work with us, we asked for some feedback because we didn't get the job. And they said, we were just worried that you were going to open a can of worms. And I thought, well, that breaks my heart, because if you don't open that can of worms, you're going to come unstuck. And lo and behold, you'll get a phone call from them in 5 years' time, I'm sure. You know, you have to open that can of worms. And we always start out by saying there will be some uncomfortable conversations, but it's better to have the conversations than to not know.
And if you're struggling to have those conversations, bring a third party in.
Absolutely.
Think about that again. My book, you talk about it countless occasions. We're speaking about it again in this interview, and the issue keeps cropping up. I mean, 60% of families fail with spirit-based reasons because of poor communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it needs to be dealt with like now. What are you waiting for?
It's no different. It's no different to anything else in life. It's why, you know, people going through separation go to mediation. You know, it's absolutely no different, because you're dealing with people's emotions, people's feelings, and you can't get away from that in the family business. That's what makes it so wonderful. But actually, very often you need someone else just to stand there and stop it just turning into a blazing row, because that's not productive at all. You know, so like I said, there is absolutely no shame in asking for help.
And a lot of the times, these emotions that are kept in are easily dealt with. They
Easily.
False premises based on assumptions that certain family members make, that they think that someone else is thinking something different.
Yeah,
It's incredible. And once it's spoken out in public, it just calms everything down. And
it's never as bad as you think it's going to be.
No, never is.
The amount of, you know, young people that have said to me, you know, they've told me things in confidence, and then we've gone to a sort of family forum, and I've said, right, you are going to eventually have to tell your parents how you feel. And they have been terrified, just of breaking their hearts really and hurting them. And then they tell their parents, and their parents are like, I'm so glad you told me that. I had no idea. The last thing I want is for you to be unhappy, because you have to remember, these are their children, you know, next generation to the business or not, these are their children. And then they give each other a big hug. There's lots of tears. And it's like, well, that was nowhere near as bad as you thought it was going to be. You've been building up in your head for the last 6 months, a year. And actually, it's the best thing. And the weight that comes off their shoulders is phenomenal, you know. So just talk.
Yeah, I agree. But why is there so much fear about talking within your parents? I don't understand, or with your children or your grandchildren. Why is there this fear, this inherent fear, do you think?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think particularly my mum's generation, maybe, you know, your dad's generation, they just don't talk. We've got a member, and he said when he took over from his dad said to his staff, you leave your problems at the door, you come to work and you go home. When the son took over, he said, you bring your problems to work. I want to know what's going on, what's happening, talk to me, because that's the only way, you know, we're going to be able to help each other, and you're going to be effective for my business. So there's that thing about the older generation where you just don't bring your problems to work, you just don't talk, you just stiff up a lip and get on with it. Then there's the other thing about not wanting to hurt people's feelings. You know, in the early days, I certainly did that with my mum. I never challenged anything. I never said anything that I thought might upset her. I just nodded and said, yes, mum, you know. And then I got to a point and I thought, well, this isn't good for me. It's not good for her. And it's certainly not good for the business. So I got to the point where I could comfortably challenge her in a respectful way. And we both agreed it's because we wanted to get to the same point. We just had different ways of getting there. So I think there are a variety of reasons for people not communicating, not talking. And I think we're all guilty of them. None of us want to confront difficult conversations. It's really hard to look in the mirror and say, maybe I need to deal with something inside me first. It's really hard to admit that you disagree or you want to challenge your parents. And it's really hard, I think, to admit that you don't really know what your children want, think, what's going on in their lives. You know, it's really difficult. And the other thing, of course, no one wants to face the thought of or the prospect of their own death. Dad, what happens if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? What happens to the family? What happens to the business? Who really, really wants to talk about that? Nobody. But we do, and we make these families have those conversations, and we say, right, you need a drop dead plan. What is going to happen if mum or dad gets hit by a bus tomorrow? A difficult conversation to have, but when they come out the other side, everyone feels better because everyone knows the plan. You would be amazed at some of the huge businesses in this country that don't have a drop dead plan, where the mum or the dad has just literally had a heart attack or an aneurysm, goodness knows what. And these massive businesses are left just completely floundering because no one knows what the plan was, because it was all in dad's head. You know, and you've got multi-million-pound businesses and no one knows what's happening. The staff don't know, the family don't know, the customers don't know. Well, that is so detrimental to a business, not to mention the family relationship. So just get it out your head, get it written down, get it vocalized. You know, it can definitely do more good than harm.
No, I thoroughly agree, and it doesn't surprise me at all because I've seen it. Your families implode because of the death of a family member, and nothing was set in stone, nothing was planned for, nothing was in writing. It was just, I'm going to live forever, which doesn't happen. It's inevitable. People don't like to face the obvious, face the facts that, at some stage our lives will be over, and we need to deal with that. We need to have a strategy in place to ensure the next generation continue the good work that you have done during your own lifetime. It's amazing, how many people leave it to chance. I don't know why, but like you said, I think it's a fear. It's a fear of overcoming or facing your fear, shall we say, and having those difficult conversations. But like you said, it's never that hard in the end. No. It's actually a relief to get it out in the open, because don't let it fester. No. I think is the message we want to get out there. So
and I think you said to me before about, how many people don't know what's in someone's will until they're at the will reading?
Oh yeah.
Why? Why aren't you honest?
I don't know. I haven't got a clue. And I have a conversation with my clients. I'm like, you need to speak to your family members about who's getting what, because the art of giving a gift is in itself you must have a strategy for the gifts you're about to provide to your kids or your grandchildren. If you don't, you're going to inevitably end up in a war or a battle in a courtroom amongst your family members. It's going to be emotive. Have that conversation now and explain to your children, your grandchildren, who's getting what and why. Who's getting the family business. I mean, a great question. See, when you've got siblings who are running in the business, at what stage should the parent decide which one of those siblings is the right person to run the business, to be the CEO? Because you can only have one CEO in a company, you can't have 3 or 4. No. So how do you get over that issue?
So I would say to you there, it's not necessarily the parent's job to choose. I would say, going back to nepotism or meritocracy, there's got to be a call for who is the best person to do the job. And actually, shock horror, it may be none of the siblings. It may be someone from outside. It may be an interim CEO whilst they're sort of getting up to scratch, So there are so many factors at play there. If you had, say, 3 siblings, they may be one very, very clear leader. There may not. There may be 2 or 3 who could all do the job, but do they want to do the job? That's the other question. What you said earlier, really, do they love it? Do they absolutely love it? And do they want to dedicate their lives to it? So we have a family business. They're a construction business run by dad, a very brilliant entrepreneur. Has got, I think, 3 or 4 children. And actually, it was the daughter who was best to lead the business next, And actually, the sons didn't want to do it. They actually wanted to be part of the construction division on the ground, So I would say it's not necessarily the parent's job to choose, but it's the parent's job to enable the best person to rise to the top.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And actually ask the children who wants to take over.
Yeah.
Because maybe they already know. I mean, like you said, you had the situation there with the construction company. The daughter wanted to take over and the sons didn't. They wanted to do the work. So yes, again, going back, we're going to keep repeating ourselves, have a conversation with your family, because it's something that shouldn't be left to chance.
Yeah.
And it helps avoid conflict, which is what it's all about, really.
And there is something that people don't like to admit, is that very often, you know, the younger generation have seen how difficult it has been for their parents and think, I don't want that for my life. You know, we live in a world now where people want very different things. I think the COVID pandemic has made us realise what's really, truly important in life. And isn't that family and health and well-being and mental wellness? And actually, they've seen their parents, you know, toil away for 30, 40, 50 years and are happy to be in the business, but think, I don't want that for me and my family. We've got other ambitions, other aspirations, other plans. And I'm happy to be in the business, but I don't want to be the leader. Yeah, and that's a really difficult thing for people to admit to their parents and for parents to hear, you know, because as far as they're concerned, they've gone out at 5 o'clock every morning to build this business for their families. Their family could have this wonderful life. Why wouldn't you want to take it over? Well, actually, Dad, because I don't have a relationship with you. We don't have anything to talk about outside of the business. And I don't want that with my own children.
No, I agree. And everyone has their own values in their life. And it's important to live your life according to your highest values.
Yeah.
And business is a part of your life. It shouldn't be well, it can if you want it to be, but it depends how you want to live your life. And it's important to ask those questions of yourself and then have those conversations with your loved ones, you know, with your family.
Yeah.
And it's important for the business as well, because the business will thrive if the people who are in charge of the business love running the business.
Totally.
And not feeling the pressure of, I need to do this because it's been in my family for multiple generations.
Totally.
So you've obviously dealt with thousands of businesses. What have you learned from these business leaders, and how have you applied that within your own business from the family business place?
What have I learned? Don't go into business with your family.
Shock horror.
Too late. And what have I learned? I think I've learned there's not enough said around the importance and the power of love in a family business. Now, you don't hear the word love in business anywhere. You know, we've got a good friend, Penny Power, and her book is called Business is Personal, because it absolutely is. And we don't talk about love enough. But if you strip back everything else away from the business that you're running with your family, love is what's left. Love is what's at the heart of it. You love each other. You love working together. You love the staff and the team that you've built. And I think you just need to acknowledge that and appreciate that more, and help you make decisions. So love, respect. My mum always says to families who are really struggling and think they're, you know, past the point of no return. She says, what brings you joy in your life? And if it ain't this, get out. Because you're absolutely right what you said before, Nick. It's if you don't love what you're doing and it's not bringing you great joy to your life, then that business is never going to thrive with you as the leader. So I've learned that you need to acknowledge more love in your business. You need to admit to yourself whether going to work every day and building that little empire is bringing you great joy. I think it's all about serving people, serving your team, serving your customers, serving your suppliers, because if you can serve them and you can make sure they're getting joy and love and happiness in their life and fulfillment in their life, that will come back to you. And I have a real thing about value. So if you can bring value to someone, they will bring value to you. Whether that's value to your customers and then they come back time and time again, whether it's value to your staff because maybe one of them's having a really hard time and you've given them some time off and said, don't worry about it, or work from home, whatever it is. If you can add some real value to their life, they will come back 10 times stronger to you. And likewise with suppliers. I mean, haven't we all seen that, you know, we've had to have relationships like this with our suppliers throughout this pandemic. Maybe it's given, you know, a bit longer on their terms, whatever it might be. If you can give some value to other people, that value will come back to you tenfold. So I think people get really caught up in family business around strategy and growth and leadership and blah, blah, blah. If you remember to love people, if you remember to bring joy to your day every day, and other people's if you can, and if you remember to just be there to serve and add value to people's lives, All of those things combined are going to make for a really wonderful business. And I know people are going to say that all sounds a bit fluffy and a bit airy and a bit, you know, pansy, but I just think it's so important. With everything that we've all been through over the last 18 months, those are what really, really matter in life. And people will remember how you treated them. People will remember how you behaved as a business, and they will remember how you treated them, you know. So they're my top tips that you'll never find in any business textbook anywhere.
No, I agree. But if you look at the world's most successful businesses, they love what they do. They all started once upon a time in a garage in their house before they became this conglomerate, multi-billion-pound dollar business.
Yeah.
Everyone started from somewhere, and it was the love that got them over the hurdles, which ended up growing the business. And it's all about value. All the best businesses in the world provide huge amounts of value. The greater the value they provide, the more valuable the business is. So 100%, and it's not airy, it's not fluffy, it's absolute fact. So love what you do, and love providing service and value to those that you provide a service or a product to.
Completely. And the other thing I would say is, you know, very often family businesses, it's sort of like paralysis by analysis. There are so many perhaps problems, or there are so many opportunities, there are so many different ways of going. We've got to talk about succession, we've got to get over this conflict. So there are so many things. And I have this saying, everyone laughs at, but you don't have to get it right. You just have to get it going. Whatever it is that's holding you back, talking about succession, managing that conflict, going after a new product or a new market, you don't have to get it right, but you just have to get it going, you know, and don't just get on with something today. Whatever that has been causing a knot in your stomach, you know, and all of us have been there. There've all been things where you've seen an email and thought, I know what that's going to say. And it causes this knot in your stomach. Just deal with it head on. And like we said before, it will never be as bad as you think it's going to be. That you don't have to get it right. You just have to get it going. You know, we have so many family businesses who are having the same conversation today that they had 5 years ago. They're no further ahead. They're no better off as a family because no one's had the balls to do anything about it. You know, so that's the other thing I'd say to families. Stop procrastinating about stuff. Just get on with it. Just do it.
Yeah, agree. It's never perfect. Doesn't have to be perfect.
No.
Don't wait for it to be perfect because it's never going to happen. Just get the thing done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And watch the magic happen. And it does. It's incredible. I've seen it in my own business. I've seen other people's businesses. They just start. They just do things. And then all of a sudden it magically works out.
Yeah.
Because they put intention in there. They put effort. Fantastic. Thank you for that. So what are the benefits and drawbacks of running a family business? I know we've covered it, so we're now almost summarizing. We spoke about how important communication is. So why people get involved in family businesses? What's the point? I mean, it's hard and it's tough. So why do it?
It's absolutely plain sailing, Nick.
Right.
So there are several reasons people get involved in their family business in the first place. My mum's got a whole long list of them, but I can only remember a few. But it's basically, you know, they left school and they didn't have anything else to do, so the parents gave them a job. So they started at the bottom, and then 15 years later, here they still are. Me. So I started in my mum's business when I came out of uni, and I was looking for a real job, and then here I am now, managing director. So so that's one of the reasons. People don't know what else to do. They might have failed all their GCSEs at school or not gone to university, and the parents don't just want them kicking around at home. So they say, right, you're coming into the office and you're going to be in the warehouse. So very often that is a route into the family business. The other is that they know they want to be in the family business. They intentionally go out and get some outside experience. So lots of families have in their sort of family charter, their family blueprint, that people have to get 5 years experience elsewhere first. So they might go and train as a lawyer, train as an accountant, go and work in industry, and then come back to the family business and bring those skills. The other thing might just sheerly by default, because dad has keeled over and had a heart attack, or something's happened to mum and she can't run the business anymore. So the only scenario they can see is that the next generation come from where they are and come in and take over the family business. So there are all sorts of routes into the family business, if you like, and there are different reasons why people stay. You know, so people that landed up there accidentally might actually realise, do you know what, I absolutely love it here, and I can have more success here in my family business than I ever could in corporate life, because there are so many different opportunities for me. Family businesses are wonderful environments for nurturing people who don't fit the mold. You know, very often you'll see kids who didn't do well at school, who never went to university, who weren't really employable for any other type of job. They get taken in by the family business and they just flourish, you know, and that's really wonderful to see. So there are many reasons why people join the business. There are many reasons why people stay. If they're just there because they can't find anything else to do, that becomes a problem. Because if they don't start pulling their weight, they lose the respect of all the other staff. They just become a bit of a pain in the backside for their parents, then that becomes a problem. The other downside.
And how do you deal with that problem?
Yeah,
get to fire your own family member.
That is difficult. So, well, we'll go back to what we said before about having an independent person. That is where different tiers of management might be really helpful. So it might be that when your children join the business, they never report directly to you. So obviously that depends on the size of your business. But if they have their own line manager and they have to go for an interview in order to get the job in the first place, and they are managed by someone else and they report to someone else, then that decision is taken out of your hands. And that goes back to what I said before about having the right structures and procedures in place to safeguard you from any possible family conflicts in the future. So they're really good tools that you can use and implement, is that when your children join the business, they report to someone else. They never report directly to you. So then everything they do is managed and, you know, dealt with by someone else, a non-family member. So of course, the upside of being a family business, you get to see your parents or your siblings or your aunts and uncles every single day. How wonderful is that, if you like them? There is just an inherent trust and absolute dedication to what you're doing. And you know that everybody's in it for the same purpose and the same result. You know, there are so many wonderful reasons why people stay in family businesses and why they do so well as a business, because they've got this wonderful family behind them who are all championing the same cause and have brought a team with them, you know. So yeah, there are pros and cons, of course there are, and you will hear absolute nightmare stories and you will hear the most amazing, wonderful stories. So I guess it depends on you and your situation. The number one tip I would give is to go and ask another family business how they've done it, because you cannot beat someone that's been there, done that, got the t-shirt. They can save you years and months of working it out for yourself because they've already done it. So I'd say whatever situation you're in, whether you're thinking about becoming the next leader, whether you're thinking about stepping back and passing it down to your children, just go and ask another family business and we can introduce you. I'm sure you can introduce people. You could just go and write to them, knock on their door. Just go and ask someone how they've done it, what they've been through, what the pitfalls were, what they wish they'd done differently. That is the best way to learn, because there are generations, centuries and centuries of family businesses who've been through world wars, world pandemics, you know, they've come out the other side. And what better wisdom and experience than someone who's already been there?
Well, how's about you give us some one of these wonderful examples and stories? We like a good story.
Family businesses. So
yeah,
okay, so we've got a really wonderful member, and she won't mind me saying, Kate Gibson from Gibson's Games, and they are like over 100 years old. I think she's the 5th generation, and they make jigsaw puzzles. Yeah, so quite a traditional old-fashioned manufacturing retail business. So what I was saying earlier about, you know, when you take over as the next generation, there are opportunities to reinvent, to do things differently. You don't have to do things how they were done 100 years ago. So when the pandemic happened, what Kate had ensured, obviously pre-pandemics, they had a really amazing e-commerce website, so that they're not just selling to stores and shops and at toy shows, they could sell online. Well, obviously the pandemic happened and they've had their best year ever in 100 years, because Kate had the skills and she was brave, and she said, right, we need to get our traditional 5th generation 100-year-old business online. And well, it was set up perfectly so that when the pandemic happened, people could order jigsaws. I mean, they were going out of stock left, right and centre. And that is a really, really wonderful story about how you can really harness the power of the next generation, rather than viewing them as perhaps, you know, not as experienced, or they don't have that amount of wisdom behind them. They haven't got 20 years of working in the business. No, but they've got some fantastic skills, you know. And my 21-year-old brother will know so much more about digital technology than I do. So I think, you know, it's about upward mentorship. So I just think things like that are really wonderful. You think on the surface, they're a 100-year-old manufacturer, 5th generation, But actually, as an online retailer and a digital sort of marketing case study, they are just wonderful and just really, really fantastic. So there are so many brilliant stories about family businesses. There's another great one. So I've got a great friend called Jacqueline O'Donovan. She runs O'Donovan Waste Disposal in Tottenham. Her dad dropped down dead when she was 19. She had to take over as managing director. So she is one of 3 or 4 siblings, I think, including some older brothers. But she took over as managing director when she was 19 years old. And it's not a sexy business, it's waste disposal. You know, it's tips and waste removal from construction sites. And she's grown it to a multi-million-pound business, you know, employing hundreds of people. They've got multiple sites around the country. She is just phenomenal. Now, there is a completely different scenario. It's a second generation business. It was really landed on her lap when she was 19, and she just took it. And she thought, right, I'm going to make this the business that I want to make it. And she has, and it's flourished, and she's providing jobs for all of those people. So there are so many different wonderful stories about family businesses. No two are the same, but what's at the heart of them is they all love each other. And I think that is so important to really hit home, because it's what separates us from corporate life.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's that word love and conversation, communication, getting your values as well, understanding your purpose and what drives you and why do you go to your business every day.
Yeah.
Not that inherent value and that inherent purpose, then what's the point? And if it doesn't bring you joy, you mentioned joy again, these wonderful words you keep bringing up, but it's so true. It's so, you know, it sounds obvious, but people don't, in my opinion, they don't appreciate. But they need to take a step back and ask the questions: why do you go to this business every day of your life? And if there's no joy or love there, then what's the point to do in your life?
And I think the business and the day-to-day running of the business can be a huge distraction to take you away from what's really at the heart of your business. What, like you say, why are you doing this? What is the purpose? Why are we in business together? Would we all be happier going our own separate ways and doing something elsewhere? You know, so I think when you're a family business, and I've met so many where something's been bubbling under the surface for months or for years and they haven't tackled it, and the business has just become a distraction, because actually the business is doing really well, it's absolutely thriving, it's turning over lots of money, well then it must be okay. It's not, because when the proverbial hits the fan, when something happens to mum or dad, or when there's a family wedding or a birth and you all have to come together and talk about something other than the business, are your relationships okay? And I'd say to a lot of people, they're probably not. You may work with your mum and dad day in, day out. You may see them, you may share an office. That doesn't mean your relationship as a family is okay. So it's really hard to sort of put a mirror up and say, right, we need to work on this. But it's also really important, because that is, my mum has a saying, you can always get another business, you can't get another family.
Yeah, no, agreed. And once it's broken, it's very difficult to fix.
Yeah, but it can be done.
It can be done, but avoid it. You can avoid it by speaking. Don't need to break the family relationship and then try to mend it. It's a lot easier, a lot less painful to deal with the issues as they arise.
Yeah.
So why is family, and I'm going to ask you this question. I know it's obvious, but why are family businesses so important to this country and the world economy?
So when we started out 15 years ago and people said, what do you do? And I said, oh, we work with family businesses. People sort of turned their nose up at me. I think family businesses were seen as the poor relation of the business sector, really. People thought it was just, you know, mum and dad corner shop, or people think of their funeral directors as family businesses, and they thought it was quite, you know, small fry. 15 years later, we've got, you know, some of the biggest firms in the world knocking on our door to sponsor our events and to be part of what we're doing. And I hope that we've had a huge influence in the fact that people are actually recognizing that family businesses are everywhere you turn, particularly in this pandemic, where in the early days we couldn't go any further than our local village shop, you know, and when lockdown restrictions were lifted and all people wanted was to get their hair cut or to get their nails done or to go to their favorite pub, all of those businesses are family run businesses. I think people are starting to recognize that now. You know, when they couldn't get their online Tesco delivery at the height of the pandemic, it was the local farm who pivoted away from farming for wholesale and actually started delivering veg boxes directly to the consumer. You know, and I just think people are really recognizing that family businesses are so important. They're so crucial. All these wonderful creative sort of little entrepreneurial side hustles that have have cropped up whilst people have been on furlough or working at home. And wouldn't you rather spend your money now with that little local family business down the road than some huge corporate based in America, you know? So I think, I mean, the stats are there are over 4 million family businesses in the UK alone. We employ close to 15 million people. So say to me, why a family business is important? Well, if they stop tomorrow, there'd be 15 million people out of a job, a quarter of our economy, you know? So, and more than that, you know, we've got family businesses and members. They employ thousands of people. That's thousands of mortgages, thousands of livelihoods, and they care. And the very last thing family businesses want to do is to let people go and make redundancies. They will do anything else to stop that from happening. So when times get tough, they batten down the hatches and they say, do you know what? There is no plan B when you're a family business. We're going to make this work. And by hook or by crook, we're going to save this business. We're going to save jobs and we're going to save the community that we're in. So, you know, why are family businesses important? Well, they provide millions and millions of jobs. They generate billions in taxes and revenue. And they are really just at the heart of all of our local communities and economies. You know, we'd be nowhere without them. And they've been there for 100 years and they'll be there for another 100 years.
Yeah,
longevity. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, obviously I could just wax lyrical about this all day, but I love family businesses. I think when you know there's a family behind it and all they're trying to do is put food on their table and a roof over their head, why would you not want to support them?
I think communities are built around family businesses.
Absolutely.
That's why I can also spend all day waxing lyrical about how important family businesses are, because they're the heart and soul of everything that we do and see in our day-to-day lives. Okay, just a real quick question, a bit more personal about yourself, but what is your experience with how women's roles have changed in the running of family businesses?
Okay, you said this is a quick one. Now you got me started. So I did a piece of research with a bank, and it was called And Daughters. And basically, the upshot of the research was that male heirs are twice as likely to take over the family business as their female siblings, even if they're in the business. So if there's a brother and a sister in the business, the son is twice as likely to take over as the daughter. Obviously, in many cases, the son is absolutely the right person to take over the business. For me, I think the number one reason, and the thing that nobody ever wants to talk about, and I rocked up to a round table and I said this and people are like, oh, a bit controversial. The point of succession usually coincides with the point where a woman wants to start a family. Now, that is a biological clock. That is science. A woman wants to start a family. She's usually at the same age when her dad or mum or grandparents are thinking about retiring and they need to talk about succession. So what happens is it's assumed that she won't take over the family business because she wants to go away and have a family. That is really tough, you know, and as a woman, when you're physically growing another human being inside of you, and then you go through childbirth and then recovery, and I've had crippling postnatal depression and anxiety, and my son is 4 and I still have small panic attacks and all sorts, you know, and I just think what having children does to you and your body and your mental state is really, really hard. But it doesn't mean you can't get back to who you are, where you want to be, and be successful at running the family business. And I'm a classic example for that, you know, but I'm very, very lucky. You know, my mum gets it. She understands. She said, right, take a year off. I tried to come back after 3 months. Take a year off, go and look after your own mental health first. And then I came back and I was better. I was stronger. I was fitter. I was just more capable of leading that business then. And I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a greater understanding by everyone, not just men, but men and women, that you can plan for having children, you can plan for having a family, just like you can plan for anything else to happen in a business. And if you make a plan, it can work, you know. And I interviewed the CFO of Synergy Bank, Francesca Hampton, and she said, you know, when people join our business, or when I have a woman on my team, I know I'm not technically allowed to say, oh, do you want to have a family? She said, but as a woman, I want to know, do you want to have a family? Because if you do, that is brilliant. And we will plan for that. Just like we will plan what would happen if you were in an accident and had to take 6 months off work. You know, we will plan for it and we'll make it happen. So the role of women in family business is really quite complex, because they're actually often the people that hold everything together. They're often even if they don't hold an official leadership title, they're often the ear that their husband uses to soundboard and to gauge ideas and opinions. And I think there's not enough recognition of the contribution that women make in family businesses. On the other side, they can be really wonderful places for women to thrive. You know, if you have a particularly forward-thinking, visionary family who understand that you need a variety of, you know, you need women, you need men, you need young, you need old, you need black, you need white, you need everyone. Variety is the spice of life, isn't it? And it can make your family business so much more successful if you embrace diversity and equality like that. So, you know, there are two sides of things. There is a real, you know, well, if you want to be the leader of the family business, then you need to just get on and do the job. But then there is the other side of things where actually you will be a better leader if I allow you to do what you want to do, have a family, come back to work, be more flexible. So there are, and like with everything, there are lots of individual scenarios, but I think women really have the power to drive family businesses forward. They make phenomenal leaders. And yeah, there's a lot more work to be done, but it's the job of everyone. And women need to speak up. You know, fantastic book by Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook, Lean In. You know, ask questions, be heard, have a voice. Don't just sit there and hope someone's going to ask you. So, you know, if you're a woman in family business, have a voice, tell people what you want, tell them your ideas. If you want to be the next leader of your family business, have that conversation. Yeah. Don't just sit there and hope someone's going to ask.
And ensure that are had amongst all family members, because like you said, it could be, you know, the daughter of the family could be your potential next CEO, and she may be the best person to lead the business for whatever reason. So don't make so what you're trying to say is don't make assumptions about women in business, and that's probably the element there. But at the same time, if you are a woman and you want to take over the family business, make sure you're heard. Yes. Make sure you voice your opinion, but also at the same time, with all families, is have, you know, either an assembly or a space whereby everyone has a voice within the family, because that's absolutely crucial. Don't ever make the assumption that that person's the black sheep of the family, or they don't want to ever take over the business. Ask them what they want to do with their lives, and you'll be surprised what you can uncover, because there's brilliance hiding there somewhere. But if you don't ask for it, and if you don't, you know, if you don't encourage opinions to be voiced, then people are not going to be heard within the family dynamic.
Completely.
Don't make assumptions. Men don't always want to take over the business.
No, completely.
They might want to do something completely different. Ask them. Don't make that false assumption.
And I've got loads of friends where dad has taken the year off on paternity and mum has gone back to work. And I think that's so much more sort of normal and acceptable now. And I think really it's, you know, women are very, very hard on themselves. We are control freaks, you know, it's like, it's my way or the highway, you know, but you have to let guys in, and you have to understand that you can't do everything. And actually, you know, we have a rule. I only employ people who are better than me. So your job as a leader of a family business really is like a conductor of an orchestra. You've just got to employ the best people and help direct them and guide them. So, you know, you don't have to do it all. You don't have to be a female CEO working 24/7. You know, you've got to let people in.
Yeah, no, agreed. And that moves us beautifully to the conclusion of this amazing interview. Thank you so much, by the way.
You're welcome.
How can people find out more about the Family Business Place?
Oh, so just go to familybusinessplace.com, or we are on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on everything. And we have a wonderful YouTube channel with loads of completely free videos. One starring yourself, Nicholas, your 5 minutes of fame. But in particular, there's a playlist called Family Business in 5. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking about maybe becoming the next leader of the family business, or anyone who's thinking about retiring and wants to talk about succession, watch all the videos on Family Business in 5. And we just tackle all of the things that come up time and time and time again in really short, sharp, doable videos, really, that you can go and just implement something today. Goes back to what I said before. You don't have to get it right. You just have to get it going. Get the conversation started.
And there's help out there. I think it's another important thing. You don't have to do it on your own. There are a
No.
lot of great people out there who want to help you, who want to create a bigger and better business for you. So don't take it on by yourself. I think that's the lesson for today. And speak and converse with your family.
And tell them that you love them.
Yeah, really important, because essentially that's what life's all about, really. At the heart of everything.
Yeah.
Love and collaboration, and bring enthusiasm and appreciation. Appreciate those that help you out in life and in business.
Definitely.